Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman for No Spin Rodeo. No politics, no BS, just hard-hitting news and rodeo commentary from two of the most trusted sources in our sport. Kendra Santos, Tommy Joe Lucia. Listen up. Here we go.
Everybody to episode number 28. This is No Spin Rodeo. I'm Tommy Joe Lucia. I'm joined by Greg Teagarden and Miss Kendra Santos. We are your real news on rodeo. We want to start with apologizing because it's been a month, but it has been a month, right? It's been a month for Cowboys. It's been a month for production personnel. Kendra, it's been a month for you. Let me just say it's been a month. What's happened in your month? And then we'll all catch up, Kendra.
Since we got together for a steak and recorded the last episode, I've been kind of here, there, and everywhere. My last road trip was I went to the Hall of Fame inductions in Colorado Springs, and then I went to Cheyenne for a couple days of slack. And then I went to Rock Springs, Wyoming, where the high school finals was for one day. And then I flew home and went to Salinas. That's my last.
I figured you'd be at Salinas. Salinas is that's like your
second home.
Second home, yeah. Well, Greg, what about you? I know you've been on the road for Piranha. I saw you for a couple of weeks in Days of 47.
Pretty much left right after the last one, and been in the Utah, Colorado vicinity for the past 3 weeks, doing a couple rodeos. Oakley, did a good rodeo up in Gunnison, and also finished up here in Salt Lake.
Well, I would say it's cooler up there, but it isn't.
No,
it
was
in Texas. It was cooler in Texas during the Utah Days of 47 rodeo than in Utah. It was roasty. So, yeah, well, that's good. Well, what do we, let's see here. I'm trying to figure out where our transitions are really rocky. You can tell we've been off for a month.
Yeah, we are a little rusty here today.
It's okay. It's afternoon. It's afternoon. We're not doing coffee time. Let's do some iced tea time.
Iced tea time. There you go.
This afternoon. I'll break the ice. I just went to the post office in our little tiny one-horse town, and I have got to be the only person with a bulldog or boyfriend who mails me homemade jelly from blueberries he picked in his yard and plums he picked in his yard. Thank you. I'm going to show you. I'm not lying here. Look at this. Wow. And he made it himself. And he just got done putting up peaches for winter too.
Peaches?
Is that cool, or
peaches.
is that peaches. Great? Lugs of peaches. I think it's wonderful. My grandma Hazel from Nebraska used to do that, and I wish I would have paid more attention instead of playing football outside with the boys. But it's really pretty cool. And
you can't do any canning?
Well, it's not that I can't. It's just I haven't quite gotten around to that. But I mean, I think that's pretty neat. Like he grows the blueberries and he grows the plums, and then he picks them, and then he makes jelly and sends them to his friends. And I think that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
It is very cool, but have you tasted it yet?
It's delightful. And am I the only one from my I try to stay away from bread as much as possible these days for waistline reasons, but from my Nebraska grandparents, the old thing we do with jelly is we have them on our scrambled eggs. Do you guys do
really?
That?
No.
It's delicious.
No.
So good. Anyway, that's what I do with the jelly that Oat makes.
I do hot sauce and jalapenos and cheese on my scrambled eggs. Greg, what do you do? Just scrambled eggs, I bet.
So you're the savory guy. I'm the sweet.
I'm just the salt and cheese, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm boring when it comes to eggs.
Yeah. Well, you got to spice them up. Well, that is really cool. I still owe him a call, and you've got a good one there. You've got a good human there. You might not. Don't screw that one up, Kendra.
You know, I think one of the very best things in the world about him is how steady. The older I get, the more. You cannot rile him up. You cannot get him sucked into some silly conversation where he loses his shit. He's just very level-headed. I'm sure that served him well in his career, but it serves him well in life too, because I appreciate it so much. Like, there's no drama, there's no BS. It's just like, you know what? Here's what's going on. And it's very refreshing.
Life's easier that way if you can do it. Most of our
Yes.
problems are self-created. If we could just let go, right, and move on and realize that it's probably not going to matter in a week, we wouldn't spend so much time with the wash tub in our gut trying to figure it out.
This is a note for all of us, because I remember this a week or two later after seeing it. I saw a couple things recently, just random videos. This one lady said, in 3 generations, no one will know that any of us was ever alive, that we ever existed. So that's pretty sobering, but it's also a good reminder, like, don't waste today, right? And so I think that's actually pretty cool. Like, don't, and something else I read was someone saying, if this is not something that will like keep you awake at night in 5 years, do not waste an ounce of your energy today on it, because it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of life.
I agree.
Good. As busy as we are, anti-anxiety little tidbits to remember like that, I find helpful. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. I mean, it matters. But the thing about it is what I've noticed is the true greats in almost everything take it personal. It's personal when it's not the way they want it. And that's so hard to be the best, because they take it personal. And when you take something personal, it's not as easy to let all these off your back. But we can do a better job at it. That's for sure. We can definitely do a better job at it. Well, we went through the Utah Days of 47 rodeo. I'll hit the highlights. We had a really blessed year. God was good with us. We sold 48,000 tickets. One of the cool things we did, Kendra, well, it didn't happen, but it was a cool idea, is that we partnered with Resistol and we sent 200 Resistol hats to Paris for the announcement of the 2034 Olympics, which Salt Lake received. And the plan was that these 200 Resistol cowboy hats would be under the seats of the 200 delegates, which, by the way, were dressed in Ralph Lauren, because that's who dresses the delegates. And when the announcement was made, the 200 delegates were going to reach down and put on their Resistol hats. And it was great. Resistol worked with them. We got 200 of them shipped over to an address I can't pronounce, to a man or woman's name, I don't know, I can't pronounce. And they got caught for 3 hours longer than they should have in customs. And now we've got 200 Resistol hats in Paris that I'm not sure what we're going to do with. So it was a cool idea.
Wow.
I did get some pictures that the governor of the state of Utah, Mitt Romney, and several other people had the hats on in front of the Eiffel Tower. So I don't know if someone just handed the hats out or what's going on over there, but we'll find out. But it was a cool idea. It was a cool idea. The other couple highlights, things that I don't know that everybody realizes. At our rodeo, one of the things I'm proud of is we try really hard to pay for really, really good livestock. And I think it's worth noting that we spent over $200,000 in livestock in 5 days. And we gave over $20,000 in performance bonuses to Wade Sankey and his crew, and Championship got $15,000 in bonuses. So, I think it's cool that the livestock, which I believe is just as big a portion of anything, they got paid well, and so we're excited about that. And our gold medal round was great. There was I'm not going to go over all the results. You can look them up, but it was a good, strong event. Proud of it. We think that the broadcast went good. So, that's what I've got on the rodeo. I've got some other things to talk about, but I'll see if anybody wants to chime in from there.
What just happened that's really on my mind a lot is the fact that it's been 35 years yesterday, July 30th, since we lost Lane Frost at Cheyenne. That is so mind-blowing to me, because he was 25 when he died, and we did not realize how young we were at the time,
Yeah.
And that he's been gone 35 years. It's like, how is that possible? It's all perfectly sharp in my mind, every detail.
Yeah.
And it's been 35
Well,
years.
that's because of who he was, right?
Amazing.
I mean, not very many people they have to have a pretty big imprint on people's lives for them to stay valid 35 years later. So that's a testament to Lane. Well, I tell you, I heard some interesting stuff that's on the streets. I hear that the Fort Worth Rodeo is contemplating not being PRCA next year. Interesting. And it has to do with the exclusivity of Wrangler. So then the PRCA Rodeo, if you're a rodeo, their sponsors, their national sponsors, there's only one left that has exclusivity, and that's the denim products. That's Wrangler and Cinch. And so you either cut a deal with Wrangler and Cinch, or you can't sell a competing sign in the arena. Everybody else is first right of refusal. If you can get a deal done with them, great. But if you can't, you can go get somebody else. Well, evidently there's a little bit of poker being played between Fort Worth and the PRCA, and I'm sure they'll get it worked out. But as of right now, they're not on the same page. So I thought that was interesting.
Is that because they have something? Is that because they have an issue with the denim sponsor?
Yeah. If you remember right, Ariat is a big sponsor of the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo. And, and I would think Dickies would be. That is kind of interesting to me that they're playing in Dickies Arena. That always has interested me, right? You would think Dickies would have a role in there. But anyway, so, there's a little bit of that going on. They may or may not get it worked out. I do think that the PRCA, and I think that they realize that, I think that they'll probably negotiate out as these contracts renew this exclusive. The other thing is a release that happened in our month of being absent, a very impressive release with not much detail. So I did a little digging, and that's the NFR and the increase. They extended the contract and the increase. And here's what's cool. In the next 12 years, all of the current monies double in 12 years. Next year, it'll be a $2 million increase. And then it goes to like $1 million. And anyway, but it ends up doubling everything. And I'll give you an example for that. For instance, the bucking horses, every time they are bucked, every out is around $10,000 now. And it'll be around $20,000 in 12 years. And if you think that it's gotten political on what horses go to the NFR, you wait till it's paying $20,000 for 8 seconds for your animal to be bucked. And the other thing that I thought was interesting, this rule is implemented, the contract personnel, they're guaranteed 30% of the increase. Now, when I say contract personnel, that could be, remember how this works at the NFR, a little NFR. The NFRC chooses all of the personnel except for the timers, the secretary, the bullfighters, the barrelmen, and pickup men. That's all a vote, right? And then Las Vegas Events picks the announcers and the music. So it's you get to pick the announcers and the music, but then the NFRC, whose tie-breaking vote is the PRCA on that committee. So at the end, the PRCA decides if there's a tie on who they choose. But the point being, they get 30%. So if it's $1 million increase, 300,000 is going to be divvied up to the contract personnel. So I think that's big money, and congrats on negotiating a good deal. The PRCA doesn't always negotiate the greatest deals in the past, but they did a fantastic job. I'm glad to see that it's staying in Vegas, and that's a lot of money, Kendra. That's good for our sport.
I have one question about that because I do not know the answer. While I hear what you're saying, and okay, there have been a few people who've tried to tell me that Texas offered so much more money. Can you confirm or deny, or do you know? Because I don't know, but I have had a few people say that, and I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, I don't have any proof. Okay, I cannot stand with fact here. However, the rumor was that it was considerably more money but if we want to do a little deep dive into this, Las Vegas is going to have a world championship rodeo in December forever, period. And remember we talked about who owns the NFR, that name. And so, again, this is all assumptions, but if you're sitting there negotiating, realizing that if you leave, then now it's going to be a competition for the Super Bowl. And Vegas has the money in the end to win. So I think getting what they needed was probably smart. And I still think Vegas is the right spot for it. I mean, it was great in Texas. I thought it was great. It was great with COVID. I thought it was interesting for 1 year. But I just don't know, right? There's so much to do in Vegas, whether you're a pervert or, I mean, there's just gambling. There's all kinds of stuff to do. There's great food. There's cool things to see. And you don't get bored every year, right? You can go do something.
You're going to live to regret what you just said, that you just slipped by. I'm like, what did you just say? Why did you say that? Keep going. But okay, for the love of God, go ahead.
Okay, we'll edit it out.
That's your headline. If you're a pervert, there's something to do.
Well, but their tagline is "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas." What does that say?
Fair.
I mean, I'm just saying. Oh, anyway, okay. So I think Vegas is the right spot for it. I think they did a good job. I've mentioned before that I had heard numbers from marathons and stuff that were more than the NFR. And our people go there 10 days. They fly in from all over the country. They spend billions of dollars having a good time there. Vegas is going to have a Super Bowl of rodeo. And it's better that it's with the PRCA than them recreating. So there you have it. Only other last thing, and then I'll kick it over to you, Kendra. We still got a situation at Cowboy Channel where, with Patrick gone, having been kind of the guy that made all the decisions, there's trickle down implications of that's being seen all the way through the ranks, right? It's tough, right? Because they've got to figure out how they're going to operate, and people have to make decisions, and I still believe that someone else will own the Cowboy Channel by the NFR. That's my personal opinion. However, the Cowboy Channel should take note. They've only got a couple years left on their deal with the PRCA, and every month that goes by and it gets closer to renegotiating that deal makes the Cowboy Channel's value less on the streets, right? If I can go cut my own deal with the PRCA and put it on TV, maybe I should just wait 2 years. So, we'll see what happens. I still think it'll be sold. I think someone will pick it up, and I think that it'll run. But I would have thought we would have already heard something. So I don't know if you've heard anything, but it's definitely just, I think that the learning curve without Patrick there is obvious in a lot of things that I hear with the Cowboy Channel.
Yeah, what I've heard is really such hearsay and speculation that I wouldn't even repeat it. So yeah, there's no teeth to it, so I just wouldn't be comfortable.
Yeah. All right, that's what I've got. What have you got in rodeo news that we want to chit chat about?
Is there any feedback, Greg, or should I just go on?
No, there hasn't been. We've been gone so long, there hasn't been much feedback.
Yeah, I've had a lot of feedback. Where by the text messages on my
feedback.
phone.
Where are you guys?
The hell are you guys? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's been loud and clear. No, we've all been rolling.
Since we're back, text us that feedback at 817-668-2395 or email us at nospinfeedback@gmail.com.
Okay. So much has happened. Starting with Cowboy Christmas, right? But like the NFR Open, Calgary, Selena, Cheyenne, there's no need to rehash all the winners, but there are, I will say, I think it's worth hitting this high note from the 4th of July. Some records being set. I know for sure it was a team roping record Driggers and Nogueira set a $47,288 a man team roping record for Cowboy Christmas earnings. And the number one timed event guy this year was Ty Harris, 49,550, which is pretty cool. Interesting that the two top timed event person and team were approaching 50 grand at the rough stock end. The high money winner was Zeke Thurston, 29 grand, and Richmond Champion was second. So a couple things about that I think are interesting, besides the fact that I think it's sweet that Caleb Driggers and Richmond Champion are both first time baby dads, which is fun outside the arena. But is it coincidental? Is the money more spread out, or is the money less in the rough stock, that it's like a $20,000 difference between the high timed eventer and the high rough stocker? Kind of an interesting, I don't know. Could be a coincidence. I was
noticing that too, because I felt like there was more rough stock at the top of the leaderboard last year around this time. And it's almost, it's all timed event guys except for a few.
Well, remember that everybody that plays in slack and doesn't win donates to the winners, right? So all the slack in timed events boost up that money. And I honestly believe that it's more spread out in the rough stock than I've ever seen. In the bareback riding, there's 10 guys that can win any night. And years ago, there were 2. And the bronc riding's been pretty stacked for a while, but there's some of these young guys. Like, normally when you're producing a show and you look at it, oh, here's who we got to introduce, or here's who's probably going to win the bronc ride or the bareback ride. And you look down that and you're like, well, there's 4 or 5 guys that could damn sure win it, depending on the horse they draw. And, I thought at our rodeo, I thought that Steiner got screwed. I think he should have got a re-ride on his horse, and the judges didn't give him one. We pay for the same caliber of horses to be in the re-ride pin, the same amount of money. Great horses are standing there. He drew the weakest one in the pin. He spurred it, and they didn't give him a re-ride, and I think that was a mistake. Now, again, the judges, it's their choice, and, I would have liked to have seen him get a re-ride. But to your point, I think it's great that the money is this high sport, that you're seeing real dollars happen over Cowboy Christmas.
On to the next one after that for me was the Hall of Fame inductions, and there were besides knowing ahead of time that JD Yates would cry like a baby. He's so sweet about that. Like, you talk to him about anything to do with his family, and he starts crying, and it's sweet and it's cool, and it's just the way it is. So, but there were a couple moments that I thought were neat. Or one was a moment. One on a cool moment was Friday night. We're outside the hall in the garden area, and under the tree, there's what appear to most people to be 2 older guys, right, just sitting there in the shade tree. And Bob Feist was honored this year with the Ken Stemler Award, and that was going on that night. Well, he's sitting there next to Art Arnold, who was one of this year's inductees, and typical Bob Feist, who, as you already know, is the guy who cut me my first check of my career. But he whips out, they're talking about the old team roping, team tying days, back when it was like Dally team roping in California, team tying in Arizona. Well, Feist whips out the first ever copy of his pioneer team roping publication, Roper Sports News, dated December 1968, and there's Art Arnold on the cover. It was 4 pages just folded in half, right? But what a cool moment. And I just happened to be standing there, and I'm like, this is so great. The godfather, as they call Feist, the godfather of team roping. But and by the way, yesterday I got the final copy of Roper Sports News in the mail of Bob Feist's turn over the reins. He's riding off to the sunset, but it was like, how perfect of the full circle of life thing in our rodeo family was this, that here's his first ever issue, him and the guy who's on his cover, because he won the world that year, sitting there reminiscing about the good old days. and now Feist is riding off, and it's like super cool. And I will also, the Field family, it tickles me. I love those people, but it tickles me that now here comes, I will be now reporting on my third generation of Fields. They are so cool. And one little thing that I remember, here's Casey Field, the greatest of all time bareback rider. And a lot of the people, a lot of the inductees, they have family and friends in town, and they go, when it's over, they go somewhere very fancy to eat, right? Casey Field was in the buffet line with the commoners. And I thought, you know what? That's so cool. He's going to go get a rodeo dog right after he gets inducted. But I think it's really neat that Shad's son, Daxton, just became the state champion bareback rider in Utah. That's so neat. And Bronx, the little brother, is the junior high bareback riding, I think, reserve champ bull rider this year. It's just, and goodness knows, little Hux, Casey's kid, here he's going to come. And we're going to blink, and it's going to go from Casey, Louie to Casey and Shad, and then it's going to, here these kids come. And that's kind of what it's all about, right?
That's exactly right.
So that was really neat. Cheyenne, Slack, we won't get dragged down with the different things. There were a few interesting comments made, as usual, about like the format, when it really hit me when somebody said, the day of calf roping, they're like, you can miss your first one and still win the daddy these days. And, that's a whole nother conversation, but it's an interesting fact. And I know
all that's going to change. All that's going to change. There'll be significant format changes, I'm hearing, in Cheyenne next year.
Really?
Yep.
Are you leaving it at that?
Well, because I don't know. I'm just hearing that the discussions are now much more real, that they're going to need to change, that they want to change their format. Now, I shouldn't say next year, because I guess I don't have a time frame, but I'm telling you, in the future, the format of Cheyenne will change. It will.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing.
Interesting. Okay. Little note that was personal to me, that was pretty cool is Cheyenne is where at 20 years old changed Oates' whole career when he won Cheyenne in 1983. And this year, Denton Good at 20 years old, who just came out of Oates' junior steer wrestling tour, won Cheyenne. And four of the top six at Cheyenne this year just are coming right out of the Oatberry's Junior Steer Wrestling World Championship Tour, which I think is really cool. And it makes the pain for me of watching him type emails and different things with his two index fingers, and that's super cool. It actually matters to get onto big stages before you get to the biggest one, right? And then, so anyway, that made me happy. Headline rodeo news today, July 31st, is that Stetson Wright finally decided to, come out with the fact that his 2024 season is officially over. I left him alone while he's been home, and I know it's been very painful physically and emotionally to come to this, because I really do think he had every intention of coming back, as he told me at Vegas last December, in Reno in June. But then, things happen, and the Cowboys have been knowing for a while that he was out, but today he officially said it. And when you're king of the mountain and you have to pull the plug for a whole year, that's tough stuff. I do applaud him, including as a mother, for waiting to be 100%, and think that will serve him well, in his career and in his life. He said, at the end of the day, when you aren't ready, you can't lie to yourself. And I'm like, you know what? Good for you. That's a pretty mature thing to say. He's heartbroken by this. But his traveling partner, Ty Hamilton, did just come back and have some success at Cheyenne. But Lord knows he is missing Stetson in the truck, right? You don't replace him in the arena or in the truck. But the other big piece of news today, right before we got on here to record, I talked to Shad Mayfield on the phone, and I think there was kind of a misunderstanding maybe that came out. I don't know if you guys watched Cheyenne on television, but it was he had said something about taking a break, and I think it kind of got maybe, I don't know if it was taken out of context or whatever happened, but he, they were like, well, it was really cool that he won it. Him and Lollipop, that mare, I mean, they're bad medicine. And they smoked them they like daylighted the field in the last round. And I am amused at so many keyboard warriors on social media acting like, well, if I could draw like Shad, well, why don't you try to see if you can rope like Shad and then we'll talk, right? I mean, stop it. People implying that like, oh, sure, they given the best ones. That's like saying Casey Field was given the best one every time he nodded his head, shush, because you're making a fool of yourself.
But the Cowboy Channel made it sound like he's done for a month.
It's not true. So he is, he had talked originally earlier this year. He was contemplating to go home after Houston because he'd had such an amazing start. But I have a son that's out for the whole season with this exact thing. When they said, oh, he's going home, he's going to go home and get his hips fixed, I knew that there's no way he wouldn't be back for the NFR. So he just had his bucket list win at Cheyenne, but he's going home for 1 week, and he will be back in 3 events at Lovington on August 7th is the fact of the matter. And he is going to rope calves, steer rope, and he's going to head in the team roping for Farron Candelaria. And those guys won. They placed at Pecos and Shad's hometown rodeo, Clovis, New Mexico this year already. But that's pretty fun. And do I understand that Lovington has to like 25 grand added in the events or something? I mean, that's kind of his home country. So that and I asked him point blank today, knowing he doesn't know as far as when he will. The hip surgery is in Shad Mayfield's future on both sides, both hips. Now is not the time. And I'm like, do you think you're going to be that guy who has it scheduled for the week after the NFR? And he said, what I know right now is my hips locked up at Spanish Fork the other day, and I knew I needed to stop. And a lot of that, I guess, too, is, all the sitting in trucks and charter airplanes has really been hard on him, too. But when they locked up at Spanish Fork, he's like, okay, gotta go home. And basically, he went home. I'm like, okay, what are you doing at home? Well, he had both hips injected with cortisone, which is pain management. And it's not like he's going to go home and rehab them in a week. And, no, he's managing the pain right now and powering through. And he said he'll go to about half the rodeos in the Northwest and figures he will get to about 70 of the 85 rodeos that the tie-down ropers are allowed to count toward the world standings. His top priority is the gold buckle and the calf roping. And he also knows that if he can get that as his top goal, then the secondary goal of winning the world in the all around, that would come with it, because he will only be there in one event. And worthy of note, Coleman Proctor did just win the all around at Cheyenne and with steer roping and team roping money. And I think he's now second in the world all around race. He's pushing really hard to try to make the steer roping finals too. So it could get super interesting if I think there's maybe a $60,000 gap or something, which is nothing in Vegas. And if Coleman adds a second finals, the steer roping finals does not pay the same as an NFR, but it could get very interesting very fast. The one person that I'm ready to heckle publicly, because I already poked him via his wife is Josh Frost. If he doesn't get his scrawny little Utah butt into the calf roping $3,000 one, throw his name in the all-around hat, he's missing the boat, because I've seen him around forever and getting 3,001. You know, how many times has he won the Linderman now? He needs to be in the all-around race, because he's killing it in the bull riding. He's likely to keep killing it in the bull riding. And, he needs to be in the game, right? Okay,
Well,
so
but
go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering, I agree with that, but he also depends on if he thinks that might break focus, right? That's the other thing that people, Ty Murray was pretty incredible because he could maintain focus in multiple disciplines and never felt like it pulled or distracted him from the other, which is what I always thought was cool about Ty. Ty would, at those events, it never looked like he was necessarily leaning, right? It seems like there's one primary discipline and then this other one that you play in a little bit. Fair, right? But
yeah, the thing is, though, I know I'm very familiar with the Frost, and there's a crossover between my kids' bloodlines and the Frost, and I know Josh's grandpa was a wild card cowboy, tough, like Josh, Joe. I mean, now their brother Jade is out there. They know that what you just said, I get it, applies to a lot of people, but it does not apply to Josh Frost. And Josh, he's done the Linderman. He thinks he doesn't bat an eye to not only jump on somebody's calf horse at Santa Maria or whatever, but to enter the bulldogging too. And he doesn't think twice about it. And by the way, one of the things I love the most about a guy like Josh Frost is if he goes to somewhere in Timbuktu, Idaho or whatever, and ducks off in the bulldogging, and if the last hole is open, if he needs to bounce one off the back end and then run him down without a hazer or whatever, he will do it. Foolish pride does not apply to Josh Frost. That's really a cool element. And I will also say Sunday, Coleman Proctor, Sunday, he wins all around. Okay, he won it in 2022 also at Cheyenne. This is such a good dad that his wife and 3 daughters flew in Friday. He had promised them he would take them to the carnival at Cheyenne on Saturday. It poured rain on Saturday, so he couldn't do it. So after he wins, they need to drive all night to get to Kansas for slack the next morning. But he takes the kids to the carnival anyway, and then drives all night with 6-year-old Stella in the passenger seat, and they watch Minions and eat cotton candy, and all the respect in the world for that. So, and this is a guy who's trying to win 2 world titles also, but dad first. Yeah.
That's the coolest thing you've talked about.
I think it is cool. And Coleman's 38. He's got some perspective. And you know what? He just graduated from college a year or 2 ago. I mean, he's not afraid to live life a little bit differently. Anyway, on the, as we ease into this point of view on setting the record straight, I will mention this. The Calgary telecast was fantastic. It was a little awkward for all of us to watch on the final day when they announced Cade Bruno, the bronc riding champ, and then said, no, Zeke Thurston's the winner. And then they went through all the awards and the acceptance speech and everything, and then said, no, actually, Cade's the winner. Oops, it really was Cade. And to that, because it leads into what we're going to talk about next, it's I feel like I have no idea what happened. I know none of us is perfect. We all make mistakes. The big thing for me in watching it is how gracious both of those guys was. They were both so gracious, because both of them, who both gave acceptance speeches, were super gracious about the other guy, and they did not shred anybody for the mistake. And I don't know what happened. Do you?
Well, yeah, I heard. And this happened to us 2 years ago at Days of 47. So the judges have handhelds. that they put scores in. And that goes in, and it's technically unofficial unless there's a rule in place. For instance, at the NFR, any scores that the judges put in the handhelds that go to the scoring system are final, right? If they made it, if they punched it in wrong, that's their final answer. That's the way the rules are for the NFR. And if you don't implement that ground rule or set it up that way, then those are unofficial, and you've got to get the sheets back and make sure that what the judges put in are what they wrote down on their sheets. And believe it or not, that can be different more times than not for a lot of reasons. I have my own personal reasons. When I see those guys huddling up, it always makes me wonder, right? When they're huddling up about on their way over with the sheets and you see something going. Here, that's what happened. Evidently, the scores came in, and this happened. We announced a gold medalist, and come to find out he wasn't the gold medalist, and we ended up paying 2 first-place prizes. We just said, look, if we're going to announce this and you're going to be crowned, we're going to correct our mistake and pay both people first-place money, which is what we did. So these scores come in, and and that's what you go on. So even at our rodeo, before the gold medal round, it takes about 3 minutes because we pull all the sheets in, and Eva Chadwick and her team have to verify them. I walk over with a system of saying clear. I read my results. They read theirs. They match. We radio over to the gold medal stage. So it was in that process, right, of digital score, handheld scores coming in and sheets coming in. And so here's my opinion on that. I think any rodeo that's $500,000 or more in prize money, it should just be standard. These judges have to take the time and punch the scores in correctly, right? That's part of your job. Get the scores in correctly, and that what the fans see and the way it's announced is the way it is, because there shouldn't be any difference, right? There really shouldn't be. They shouldn't forget between when they punch it in. I mean, it's two numbers. You punch it in. How can it change that much before you write it down? So that's how it happened, and it was unfortunate for the producers of the Calgary Stampede, because I've been there. It sucks, right? And it sucks more for those guys that won or thought they won. I mean, that's terrible. And then the fans, because it starts to create doubt and credibility issues, which I don't think are the case. It was just fixing, like in our case, there wasn't anything hanky-panky going on. It just was 1 point difference between the written sheets and what was punched in. It wasn't, and actually I think it might have been a 0.5 point difference. It was, so I can see how it can happen, but we need to figure out, again, I'll say this again, with instant replay, with the technology that's out there, at some point, our sport has to decide to invest in utilizing what's out there to make sure that the right winner wins. Period. Mark out rules, markouts to say, all these things that we all see. I saw it again this year, right? You just see it happening and you're like, really? And I think that's going to go on to what we're talking about coming up, right? Really, this stuff can be reviewed and laid down against the rules, and then it's policy. It's black and white. So I don't know.
Yeah, perfect segue and transition actually into the last thing that we're going to talk about it when it comes to setting the record straight. So I just spent 3 days of my life trying to do right in fairness, to be a real journalist who takes the time to talk to people from the various points of view in a situation. And this particular situation is in regard to a call made on July 20th at Salinas in the tie-down roping. Young Texas roper Cash Hooper, who I do not know personally, but have now spoken to for about an hour. He was 12-3 on his first calf in morning slack that day, and then, according to the scoreboard, was 10-4 on his second one, which would have put him high up in the average and probably put him in Sunday's short round, but he got flagged out by Harry Rose, who was for, I believe, 29 years a pro official and is now an A judge, which is the highest rated of the ABCD judging. It's the highest ranking you can be. I think that he has flagged the NFR 22 times, and I know he has flagged Salinas over 30 times. At any rate, what sparked, or I don't know, what led to me spending 3 days to go to the trouble of talking to everybody that I thought represented a point of view that was relevant was that there's been a lot of, I don't know, heated conversation, controversy, whatever you want to say, mudslinging on social media from a family member, posting this and saying, it was a $1,500 charter from Salt Lake, had to pay somebody to haul a horse, had to pay entry fees, hotel room. Harry Rose was the judge at Houston that cost Bo Cooper 50 grand. The PRCA needs to blacklist people like him. Hashtag blacklist Harry Rose. Hashtag pull his card. And I was like, okay, well, anyway, I don't, again, know these people. I'm sure they're very lovely people. And to be fair, rodeo families, we're all exhausted. We're all, it's, of course, your kid gets flagged out, you're bummed out. And I get it that this particular call, as every calf roper I have talked to, and believe me, there have been many in the last few days, they've all had this call go both ways. And the basics is that he got back on his horse and he just put a wrap and a half on the calf, and then his horse took a step back, and it, according to the video they posted, it pulled the calf's head back down to the ground. The calf ended up not getting up, but that step back is where the gray area came. And in Harry's eyes,
how is that
went against the rule book?
How's that gray area? It's clearly written.
Well, so in speaking to all the different parties, Cash's take from where he sat was that he wasn't trying to get away with anything, but that the rule says you cannot go backwards and make the rope tight once it's loose. In my opinion, the rope was never loose. The rope was not touching the ground, so the 6 seconds wasn't going to start until it was. So he felt like, whatever it looked like, he reached for his jerk line, and his horse just happened to take a step back.
How is the calf able to lift his head if there's not some kind of slack in the rope? How is that possible? I'm
definitely not here to argue, and I'm saying I thought he was very cool-headed when we talked, and said, and also for the record, Harry Rose had zero to do with the call at Houston. He wasn't even working in the calf roping at Houston last year when Bo Cooper got 10 seconds he didn't deserve. He was at the other end of the arena. He had nothing to do with it. So I guess, it's kind of unfortunate to, send something. I mean, that's just not true. So it does make me feel like I'm doing what I learned to do in college, and that is to get all the viewpoints and say, here's the facts, everybody, and you all can decide for yourselves. So in this case, I spoke to Cash Hooper. I spoke to Harry Rose. I spoke to timed event rep on the PRCA board, Troy Pruitt, who's also a world champion calf roper. I spoke to event rep, tie down event rep, Shane Hanchy, who's also a world champion, and I spoke to Tom Glass. And I gave everyone's view, and with a little PS, at the end. And to be fair, apparently there was a little comment made about Oklahoma that in hindsight, maybe Harry would not have made, we're not in Oklahoma here or something like that. Having just read the new verbiage on the the renewed rodeo ban language in the city of Los Angeles that if it passed would ban bareback bronc riding, saddle bronc riding, bull riding, calf roping, steer wrestling, team roping, or any other activity that involves physically wrestling an animal to the ground, roping an animal, or attempting to ride and remain mounted on a bucking animal in the city of Los Angeles is scary. I will also agree with Troy Pruitt here that the rules are the rules. This had nothing to do with location. Whether or not Harry should have said that or not, what Harry feels about that now is, in hindsight, I guess I wouldn't say it again. But my intent on saying that was to try to help this kid understand that the microscope is hot out here, basically, And so it's an interesting, it's interesting, and I'm not here to like insert my personal opinion because it doesn't matter. That's not my job. My job is to lay out the facts, and I feel good about doing that. So everybody can decide for themselves.
I thought your article was great. It's normally great. For me on this, I don't want to get into it's a whole nother discussion about calf roping and California and all of that. But I'll tell you the thing that bugs me the most about this. So SI Rodeo, who I want to say first off, it's a great blog. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that they put out. So I think that, that's really good. But when I first started hearing about this, I went and read their article. And it reminds me of current journalism. And that is, they basically said that this was the fact that this roper was done wrong. I mean, there wasn't two sides of the story. There wasn't any true journalism in it. It was based on a video posted on social media. And shame on those of you out there that are going to go to print with stuff without making sure that you do what you did, Kendra, and share both sides of the story. I've said this all along. What happened to the day when the news didn't tell you what to think? The news just told you what happened and you formed your own decision. But I think that's a direct derivative of what we talked about with social media, and that is, everybody taking their side of the line, ignoring any other points of view or facts for that matter. Simply ignoring the facts to get your point across. So shame on SI Rodeo. I did not think that was one of their better deals, and I think it probably stirred the pot. Because while I was reading it, I'm like, well, where's Harry's side of this? He was there flagging it. He probably had flagged no telling how many. I know him from forever. I know his credibility. That's not a guy that's going to, I don't think you could foul him, right? That doesn't mean that he can't make a mistake, but nothing's going to be done. The comment probably didn't help him, but there's a lot of truth in the fact that what could have been said is we're a public event that buy tickets to watch. We're not on the ranch, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to make sure that we keep our standards for how we handle our animals, which I think is fantastic. I think we do a great job with. I mean, I could argue that all day. So, that was what post, right? Is that just like anything anymore, anything you read on social media or anything, you almost can't believe it, Kendra and Greg. You can't. So I've gotten to the point where I approach social media as entertainment, but so many people approach it as news, and it's not. It's the journalist. The news isn't the news anymore. If you're the right, you watch Fox News. If you're the left, you watch CNN. Where can you watch? I don't care what you think about what's going on. I just want to know the facts, and I'll figure this crap out myself. The same thing with this. It's just irritating. Ugh. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's a really sad commentary about the evolution of journalism because the integrity is really sketchy. And even if you think, I'm going to really make sure I find out the facts, and you're like, I'm going to Google it. Well, do you think you're going to get all the, straight answers about it? I've kind of given up on the news, and I'm like, man, I mean, is there anybody who doesn't lie or twist the truth? And so, I don't know. It's just, it's.
These calls can go either way. I think I think in that particular case, the way it went down was probably easily as arguable as the right call as not. It's unfortunate. We always put emotions in things, right? And that's why I say at the end of the day, you have to have policy, rules, and procedures, right? You have to have something to go back to because your emotions sway what you want to do. They really do, but you have to go back and follow the guidelines that have been put in place and voted on. And I think that's what they did. And so it's unfortunate.
Well,
that
another thing brought up during these conversations that is a fair point that I don't think very many people stop to consider is, how about all the other guys entered? How about the guy that if this goes the other way, would have been upset because he didn't make the short round or because he didn't get a check in the round or the average or whatever? Like, where does it end? Ultimately, you have to take your best shot at making your best call in real time, heat of the moment, every single time. And then as Cash himself said, this stuff has gone both ways. Also, probably a fair point that a lot of judges are jaded and defensive because there are guys who actually intentionally do this and then bitch at the judges. So they're kind of head shy anyway. So then this happens. Maybe it was 100% unintentional. And then he asks a question and maybe feels like he got his head bit off, even though that was certainly not Harry's intent. But maybe judges, they are jaded because of the guys who really do break the rules on purpose and then yell at them. So then somebody who's innocent and asks a question and they get their head bit off. I mean, I can understand those scenarios happening. Again, we're all human and we're all imperfect, but being human, if you think, oh, here comes another tie down rope, we're trying to get away with something or whatever. And in fact, maybe he was trying to get away with nothing.
Well, that's much less of a foul to me. Enforcing a rule the way you see fit, that doesn't bother me either. What actually bothers me is these events and sanctioning bodies that change the rules. That bugs me, right? If you post the way it's going to be, and this is how we're going to compete to win this, then you stick with it. Even if you realize halfway through that, oh, we didn't think about this happening or that happening. Everybody's playing by the same rules. You stick with it and you make the adjustments to make it better in the next game, the next round, the next time that everybody starts fresh at that title. And so, again, I think the rules are written, enforcing them. I can see what you're saying about the judges. I mean, the judges, it felt like at times were a little cranky, but it's the middle of the summer. It's just like all of us. It's the middle of the summer, gabillions ahead. The tolerance level on all of us drops. It just does. Everybody's tolerance level about, it's that breaking point, which is the same thing. What you're going to see at Dodge City and everything is all these cowboys that are now looking at and where they're at. Now you're going to see people going home, right? You're going to see doctors, you're going to see a lot of less on the road which is really good because that makes financial sense. I get it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but that's the truth of the matter. It
makes financial sense for them, but it makes the knife fight at the end extra financially painful because now you're duking it out between, with the top 25 or 30 guys in the world. It's not like some of the good guys went home. No, it's the baddest cats out there are there fighting for less money. So then, of course, emotions are going to run high and everybody is exhausted and their credit cards are probably pissed off too.
Not the truth. I agree. But that's a good point. And great job on your article. I thought it was very well done. Of course, I think
Thank you. I hope it was time well spent. I feel like it was. I think it's worth the effort when we do, and when we try not to be emotional. And I do make the point that trying to look at the greater good of the sport. If we can all we say that almost every time we get together here, but something comes up that drives it home because it's true. And, you know, I am all about rodeo, and I love the tie-down roping. And I also mentioned that, you know, this was the 50th anniversary of when my dad won the all around at Salinas. Well, when I'm a little kid in the 70s and I'm at the Cow Palace, my dad's roping calves at 11 o'clock at night or midnight because they held all of the calf roping after the rodeo. Cotton did, you know. And fact, the Cow Palace is not PRCA this year because of things that could not be resolved with the calf roping. So the threat is real. And I you know, that's a whole nother conversation for a different day. But man, if there was ever a time for unity and cowboys standing strong and standing together, it would be now. Because if anybody is kidding themselves if they think that this would not go from California to, you know, from Los Angeles to Denver, Houston, and San Antonio, they're on crack. And the attention, if anything should go awry with one event, you know, the heat is on already in the team roping, the bulldogging, and everything else. So
but
the slippery slope, we want to stand up.
There's been some battles won. You know, for the first time ever, there'll be a bull riding event in Pittsburgh. You know, you couldn't bring bucking horses in on a straight truck in Pennsylvania. And so I think that we need to stay firm. I agree with you. We need to stay firm on what we're doing. But as long, you know, like I say it all the time, all these events that I've done, when I take animal rights people behind the chutes and I actually show them, it's kind of like a Mythbusters. They walk away. If they truly, if their motive is about the animals, if that's truly their motive, they walk away fine, you know, happy with the situation. Now, there are those that I've done that their motivation is all money, all cause.
Right.
It's that they don't want to know the truth, nor do they want to talk about the truth, nor do they want to observe the truth, because that's not in their financial or brand image. It's not good for them. And so those people, you're not going to win anyway, right?
But I'll say this: Cotton, throughout his life, took the time, like you're talking about, you've done. It's no different than me taking the time to write this story. It is important that we take the time to do these things, because you're right. The facts are on our side, and we need to go out of our road, every single one of us, you know, instead of, you know, poking fun at the person who shows up with their hat on backwards or whatever, because it's their first rodeo. How about let them pet your horse, or, you know, show their kid, you know, let their kid rope the dummy with you, or, you know, let their kid put, you've got your bareback rigging on the ground, let their kids stick their hand in the rigging or whatever, so that it becomes personal and they understand how special cowboys are, because they are. They can't go to a freaking NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball game and walk up to LeBron James, but they can walk up to Casey Field. They can walk up to Trevor Brazil. You know, they can walk up to Stetson Wright, Chad Mayfield. Yep. So, I mean, it makes us different, makes us special, and it's worth fighting for. But all of us taking the time, every single one of us, you think you don't matter, you want to be a smartass and make fun of people, not a good idea if you want this to be going on when it's your kids and your grandkids.
Completely agree. Well, we've been going for about an hour. We hope that we did a good job. We apologize again. We'll get back on schedule for all of our listeners. I want to take this time to thank God and Kendra and Greg for today. Sun shining, and think about all the things you have. Be appreciative of our sport. I think that's what Kendra is saying. Be appreciative of the people around you in our sport, because that's the magic sauce that makes us keep going and sweating and eating hot dogs and doing the stuff we do because of our rodeo family. So here's to the rodeo family on episode 28 of No Spin Rodeo. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.